Well, welcome everyone. Thanks for signing up and joining us today. My name is Jumus and I work for Whistler Multicultural Society. And welcome to our second day of the Building Inclusive Communities discussion about diversity and equity. I would like to start by introducing to you Bill Ritchie. He's from the Lillooet Nation. Bill worked at the Squamish Lillooet Cultural Center for 14 years, and he still works there. Over to you, Bill. You're muted, Bill. You're still muted. Perfect. Now you're.
Oh, sorry, I'm on now. I didn't know I muted myself.
All good.
Hi, everybody. How are you all doing? My name is Bill Ritchie. I'm from the Lillooet Nation, and I'd just like to introduce myself in my language too. Kawa'alap Gukshamkelip Jishnuka in Chanchinamkin Lillooet. Hello, everybody. Thank you and welcome to Squamish and Lillooet territory. And it's always an honor to share with you guys and to be here with you in this meeting this evening. Thank you. And hopefully we'll have a great evening. Thank you.
Thanks, Bill, for joining us today. Also, I'd like to respectfully acknowledge that this event is also being hosted on the traditional and unceded territory of the Squamish and Shishan Nations. Again, my name is Jumus, and I am the outreach worker for Whistler Multicultural Society. My coworker, Juliana, is going to be the other facilitator today. And she's joining us from the Sunshine Coast, and she works for the Sunshine Coast Welcoming Communities. This event is brought to you by the Whistler Multicultural Society in partnership with Whistler, Pemberton, and Squamish Welcome Centers and Sunshine Coast Welcoming Communities. Our thanks to Canadian Heritage and the Resort Municipality of Whistler for making this event possible. I'll just go over some Zoom housekeeping. Please make sure to mute yourself unless you want to speak. If you have any questions, please feel free to send it in the chat box on Zoom, and one of my coworkers is monitoring this chat box. Also, I would like to mention that this event is being streamed live on Facebook and it's being recorded. If you feel uncomfortable with that, you can turn off your camera and mute yourself. But other than that, I'll start mentioning some agreements and expectations that we need to, let's say, read today. So this event and the community discussion is about encouraging an open dialogue about building more inclusive communities in the Sea to Sky and the Sunshine Coast region. And for that to happen, this needs to be a safe place where everyone feels respected. Some topics that might come up during our discussion can be uncomfortable and bring up a variety of emotions. Please feel free to take a break if you need one and come back when you are ready. We ask everyone here to respect each other's views, opinions, experiences, and time. We don't have to agree, but we do need to respect each other. As moderators, we will do our best to manage this. Also, I will note that we will have zero tolerance for those who promote hate speech or discrimination against others. Thanks everyone in advance for the respectful communication and conversation that we are going to have today. I'll start with a warm-up exercise for everyone in one or two words. If you can describe what diversity and equity means to you and what comes to your mind when you hear someone saying a diverse community. You can use the chat box to send your responses so everyone can see it. And Juliana will take over and tell us more about the agenda for today.
All right, thanks, Jamus. Hello, everybody. So for our session today, we have a panel of 6 community members from different backgrounds that are going to talk about diversity and equity. We'll start the discussion with two prepared questions. And if the audience have any question for the panel members, please again use the chat and we go through these questions at the end. If there's time at the end, we'll give the opportunity for you to speak and share your perspective or experience if you like to. Okay, so why we are talking about diversity and equity today? Canada is a highly diverse nation, and British Columbia is the most ethnically diverse province in Canada. Newcomers and immigrants can experience a number of barriers and inequities as they adapt to life in Canada. And racialized Canadians experience barriers and inequities in their daily lives too. For example, access to employment opportunities appropriate for their skills and experience, affordable housing, negative experience, and discrimination. The goal of equity is to ensure everyone has equal access to opportunities around them, including the workplace in the community. We all have the right to be free from discrimination and harassment, and British Columbia has a law to protect and promote our human rights. It is called BC Human Rights Code. This event is about exploring diversity and equity in the Citrus Sky and Sunshine Coast region and finding ways to make our communities more inclusive. Now, we would like to show a short video to share some views and perspectives from local immigrants living in the Citrus Sky and Sunshine Coast. We asked them the same questions that we are going to talk about today. So let's see what they said.
I used to think yes, but I'm not sure now.
Most likely, yes. I feel included and involved.
Yes, I really feel that. Yeah, I can, it's a work environment or any communities or events, I feel really welcome.
Short answer, no.
Yeah, I think so. Like I have friends from different walks of life and from different parts of the world, and I don't feel I'm excluded or anything like that.
I have mixed feelings about that.
I think inclusive to me comes down to what you want to do. I feel excluded.
I feel like I have equal access to, whatever is available here.
I lost a job, and I believe they didn't understand about the diversity and inclusiveness. I think it's from their heart. They couldn't put on my shoes.
I feel like opportunities are there, but if I don't go there and search and find out all those opportunities, then I would just assume like I'm not included.
Back in Brazil, I had a really strong education and a really strong experience. And when I started looking for jobs here, they didn't even call me back. You don't have equal access. It is a toll and everyone's confidence, and I feel that is something that is a little bit institutionalized here.
I think the best way to have like a more inclusive society is to get the voices heard of everyone.
If we think something wrong, we need to speak out. If we don't speak out, nothing changes.
If you see anything, voice it. As a Canadian, as an immigrant.
I can't think more than just being informed, because once you know, then yeah, you wouldn't do or say or think in a way, where it would harm another individual.
I think talking more, like having conversations like we are.
We need to really work at systematic discrimination.
We need to educate ourselves.
Is you educate yourself There are a lot of resources there.
If we like to change, we need to talk about it.
It's all about knowing, and ignorance is always that lead us to certain behaviors that aren't acceptable in our communities and societies, such as racism and bigotry and bullying and harassment.
The other thing is like having more platforms to for people to understand different culture, because it's only when you know the other culture you kind of eliminate the ignorance, and it's only when the ignorance is eliminated you can create a more inclusive society.
To improve, we need to change. We cannot just keep doing the same thing over and over.
Already, so what you have seen was interviews with local immigrants from the Sea to Sky and the Sunshine Coast again. And now I'm going to start introducing our panel members for today. So our first panel member is Izumi Inoue. Izumi immigrated to Whistler in 2004 and is grateful to be raising teenagers in this beautiful land. Her life experience with her work supporting community members in this community have led her to understand the importance of advocating for our diverse community. Our second panel member for today is going to be Priscilla Pilange. Originally from the Philippines, migrated to Canada in 2014, currently working as a human resources coordinator with the House Sound Women's Center Society. She is a public services and materials management specialist at Whistler Public Library. Priscilla is a 2021 Katie Burnett Leadership Award recipient. Also, she is the current president and board member of the Whistler Multicultural Society. Our third panel member is Cameron Guter. Cameron was born in Vancouver and grew up in Surrey, BC. He studied biology and then completed his Master's of Divinity. He has a special love for evolution and ecology. Cameron is an ordained priest in the Anglican Church of Canada and has served the parish of St. John the Divine in Squamish for the past 2.5 years. He is also involved with the Squamish Multi-Faith Association and Squamish Community Christmas Care. Our fourth panel member is April Strathers. April is a free-ranging management consultant working regionally in BC and across all sectors. She fosters management and organizational development for high-performance humane workplaces. For 10 years, April has been designing and delivering anti-racism and anti-hate projects on the Sunshine Coast and abroad. Our fifth panel member is Bill Ritchie. Bill is from the Lillooet Nation, worked at the Squamish Lillooet Cultural Center for 14 years, and he still works there. He's part of the Lillooet Nation Land Management Board and the Lillooet Nation Land Use Referral. And our last panel member for today is Donalda Seegers. Mayor Donalda Seegers has served Seashelt as a councillor since 2011 and was elected mayor in 2018. Donalda has a deep commitment to her community and has given her spare time to a number of tables, committees, and boards on the Sunshine Coast. So after introducing the panel members, I'm going to start with our first question for our panel members. And the first question says, do you feel that you live in an inclusive society and that you have equal access to opportunities around you? We can start with April. I'm going to also type the question in the chat so everyone can have access to it.
So good evening, everybody. Thank you for including me in this panel. And it's great to see so many faces with an interest in and a background in working in these issues that are by no means easy. And I'm going to answer the second part of the first question first. I am someone who has equal access to opportunities-ish with a couple of qualifiers. And that's because of my social location, and lots goes into that. I'm Caucasian, I was born here, I have one of the main languages in British Columbia. I'm educated. I've got professional designations, and that gives me a ticket to work, and also employment mobility. So I can go to different places to work if I need to. And I choose my work, and that's a huge privilege. I have social mobility. I could probably work my way into any of your social circles, really, and am invited, as well as being able to invite myself into what I want to. I've got connections, and I'm known. And with those connections and being known, I can exert some influence to hopefully change things for the better in areas that we want to do that. I have privilege, in short. But every point that I've mentioned that gives me privilege, for those with whom I have differences, there can be oppression connected to those differences. And health literature tells us that if we carry enough oppression, and if we suffer the friction and the microaggressions that happen every day for those differences, it affects our health in the end. And anything that affects individuals' health affects the population health too. So that's a really important thing to keep in mind. The areas where I don't have privilege, I have suffered some discrimination in ageism and in terms of gender, where I make 79 cents on the dollar that male members of our society do. But those are pretty minor, and I can manage those quite easily. For people who can't manage them, this is not an inclusive society. So that's the second part of the question. I'm immune to things that cause me to be excluded. If you're not immune to that, then you are not in an inclusive society, if that makes sense. And the more that you're affected by the differences, the frictions around differences, the more that your health will be affected, and the more that you don't have a great community life in the way that I do. And that's it.
Thanks, April, for sharing your opinion with us today and sharing your personal experience. I'm going to ask our second panel member, Bill Ritchie. Bill, again, do you feel that you live in an inclusive society and that you have equal access to opportunities around you?
I want to answer just like the first person. Educated, to start off with the second part, I'm educated. I got a business background, and I also have First Nation studies and linguistics. That gave me an opportunity to be working where I am today. And it made me into a very social person. I'm very open, and I could talk to just about anybody once we sort of like break the ice right away. And that way it gives me an opportunity to talk. And sometimes I can't stop talking when I meet a person as well too. And the best way to do that is just to get them involved by doing icebreakers, complimenting. But in inclusive, I had a lot of challenges growing up in the society, and especially in the past parts, it was a lot tougher in the older days. But now I love where I am, and it gives me, I accept where I am, I should say, in what I do and what I can do. And that makes me more involved in being who I am, and also working with all my people that I work with, and all people that come to visit us as well too at my workplace. And I love being open, and I talk to, and I teach the younger ones also how to be open too, so that way we could be a little bit more accepted. And that's more of my job, to be sociably accepted. And yeah, I think that's pretty well what I could answer and all that. Thank you.
Thanks, Bill. Yeah, that's really important to hear from people who live with us and work in our community. How about you, Cameron? What do you think about the question?
Thank you. Hello, everybody. I just want to say how honored and humbled I am to be invited to be part of this panel, particularly as someone who represents an institution that has often been an oppressor and suppressor of diversity and difference, and not a champion for equity. So I'm really, again, honored, humbled, and hopefully won't say too much so I can listen to all my wonderful co-panelists. And to answer the question, I wish I lived in an inclusive society, and I wish that I had equal access to opportunities. And I used to believe this. That's sort of what I grew up being taught. But more and more, I'm sort of becoming aware, like I think April was mentioning, of my enormous privilege that I have, and actually how much greater access to opportunities that I have relative to others because of my skin color and language and culture and religion and education and gender and sexual orientation and all these other things. And having this unequal access to opportunities is something that is really easy to be ignorant of when you don't have to deal with all the barriers and challenges yourself. So I've been learning, and it's hard to shed that ignorance because it's really goes against the narrative that we tell ourselves, that perhaps I'm a good person, that I got here on my own merit, that I'm not part of a system or a society where that is not inclusive, that is unfair or unjust. And so, yeah, so it's not been comfortable. And I just want to say thank you to all the people who've educated me along the way, who've been really generous with their stories and their teachings. And I still have a long way to go. It is not a destination sort of journey, I think, inclusion and equity. I think there are many who believe we are in an inclusive society, which, like I said, I think is a bit of a myth. However, and because I just wanted to share, just as someone who's sort of in the dominant culture and dominant in almost every respect, that I've heard even people who want inclusion to be the way that our world is and our society is, who have said this, but there's always caveats and conditions attached to it. You know, yes, as long as things don't really change, and as long as things aren't all that different, and the people aren't all that different, and as long as they conform to enough for me to be comfortable. Anyway, I think that's all I want to say on that. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Cameron. Yeah, definitely speaking about diversity and equity is a journey, and it's a long journey. How about you, Nelda, as a mayor and as someone who works in the community in the Seashell or the Sunshine Coast? How do you feel about the community there and inclusivity?
So do we live in an inclusive society? I'd say no. And I think the first step in addressing that is being aware of it, right? Because if you're not aware of it, you're never going to make any headway with dealing with it. So we have minorities who live in our community, but they don't necessarily have a voice. And it was interesting to hear that in the video. We have Shishalt Nation members. They live right on the reserve in the middle of our community. LGBTQ2+ members, they've started to speak up, and it's really nice to see. We have Filipinos, Japanese, East Indian, and others in our community. And how do I know they don't have access to opportunities? If I look around at all the meetings that we have, the representation on our boards, our committees, our councils, they aren't there. So, they don't have a voice. They're not taking part. And I think that's on us in looking at how we can actually make it available to them and invite them in. We haven't gotten there yet, but it's something I think April and I will be doing some work on that. Do I have equal access to opportunities around me? I'd say no. I think it's more subtle given who I am and what I do. But as a woman, I've experienced discrimination throughout my life, typically from men in positions of authority. I've had to earn my credibility. There's an underlying assumption that as a woman, I'm not very intelligent, and that the ideas I put forward don't have merit. Prior to becoming mayor, there were many times when it would take months sitting on a board or a committee for a male colleague to recognize that what I put forward was actually worthy of discussion. And there have been many times when I put forward a suggestion or idea, and I'm sure others have experienced this, it wasn't even heard. But the exact same idea would then be expressed by one of my male colleagues. And because he voiced it, it was given credibility. And I'd look on in disbelief when he was then given credit for the idea that I voiced first. Right? So, I mean, we've all experienced that. So I'd say no matter your race, your color, your creed, we've all experienced discrimination at one time or another. And it's important for all of us to watch for it and work to combat it wherever and whenever we see it. That's it.
Thanks so much. Thanks for sharing your personal experience as well. How about you, Zumi, as a member of Whistler community and as a parent who lived here for a long time and still lives here? What do you think about the question?
Yeah, well, first of all, I want to say thank you for having me as a panelist and in this important conversation in our community. And I'm very grateful and honored to be here tonight to have this conversation with everyone all across the Sea to Sky Corridor and Sunshine Coast. And as an immigrant and a recent settler, I'm very grateful and fortunate to be able to live and raise my children in this beautiful area on the unceded traditional territory of Squamish Nation and Lillooet Nation. And I also acknowledge that I have so much privileges as an immigrant coming over to their land. And I also want to talk about this empowerment I also carried because I moved to Canada. I didn't recognize this, or I wasn't aware of this idea up until recent because I wasn't really paying attention. Growing up in a country, I'm from Japan, it's mostly Japanese there and single culture. I wasn't aware of the privileges of being there in a dominant majority over there. But coming to Canada, moving here, then I started to feel some parts of my social identities is actually creating barriers to access to the equal opportunities. But I wasn't really aware of it, or I haven't really realized it until recent when I started to really think this over. So I know April has mentioned at the beginning. So my social identities can be like an immigrant, a woman, a person of color, speak English as a second language, and financially restricted. And I have other privileges just being here as well, on the other hand. So when you think about inclusive society, what does it come to your mind? I think it could be a little bit different to everyone. But I recently thought about this. Have I ever been discriminated, or have I been treated unequally in Whistler or in Sea to Sky Corridor? But my answer was no. I never thought I ever had been discriminated because of my social identities. But perhaps I'm unconsciously experiencing and expecting that I can't be starting from the same playing field because I'm an immigrant and I have all these the layers of disempowerment. So I kind of sort of expect myself to be starting from a different playing field. So having that in my mind, maybe I'm already thinking I'm not being discriminated or being treated unfairly, but maybe because of my unconscious thinking of where I'm starting from. So maybe that the idea of the inclusive society or community can look differently based on your social identities. And I was just wanted to thank the opportunity being given to me tonight just to think this over once again with everyone. Thank you.
Thanks, Izumi, for sharing your experience with us. Priscilla, how about you? As
Thanks
someone
again.
who works in organizations and was there involved with the community and lived here for a long time, what do you think?
Yeah, thanks again for including me in this conversation. I am Priscilla Belonge. My personal pronouns are she and her. And I respectfully acknowledge that I live, work, play, and learn on the unceded traditional territory of the Squamish and Lillooet nations. I could better answer those questions by sharing my experience and using the analogy of my husband being a Canadian, 5'11" tall, and me being an Asian descent, 5 feet tall. My husband and I love having some snacks in our house, and he loves chocolate. He's a chocolate lover. We usually stash those chocolates on the topmost location of our cupboard and in our kitchen, and the regularly needed snacks at the lower and mid-level, which are easily accessible by me without just opening it and then reaching out for it. But on rare occasions, I am craving to eat some of those chocolates too. And whenever that happens, the ever resourceful me would be not asking for his help to reach for it. I'll grab a stool and then step on it and then open the cupboard and reach for those chocolates on top. So being an immigrant is always a one step forward, two step back process. There are lots of intersectionality overlapping into being an immigrant, me being a woman, people of color, English is not a second language, all of those items that April have mentioned earlier. So we always needed to exert twice the effort into assessing and reassessing and everything that we do and plan on how we can be able to achieve our more than the basic necessity goals. Having both live and work in 3 different continents, Asia, Middle East, and the North America, I feel that I am currently living in a society that is working towards an inclusive society. There were plenty of opportunities and resources available in the Sea to Sky area to support the varying needs of the community. There's an abundance of not-for-profit groups providing a roof above the people's head, providing appropriate clothing for the season, and fighting food insecurities, helping fight for those insecurities. However, some resources are not easily accessible to Canadians, newcomers to the region, and immigrants alike. Some needs of the newcomers are hard to translate and are intangible. In my case, the challenge in having access to an equal opportunity came in the form of employment, which is the basic need of a person whenever you move in a certain location. Trying to go back in an employment field that was aligned to my career in the Philippines and in the Middle East, which is being in human resources. Plenty of employment opportunities here in Whistler. Yes, they are like this other snacks that you would want and easily be able to access through the middle cupboard of your kitchen. However, I've seen that most of the skilled immigrants could relate to this. It is a common fact that as an immigrant, we acknowledge that we are new in the country and we have so much to learn about the culture, ethics, and the workplace. It is quite common that we are underemployed. We accept that the job that is usually an entry level or lesser than what we used to do in our home country. And in the case of the majority, any job that could provide for our family. So it's quite common that you would see doctors that are now taxi drivers, dentists that are school custodians, nurses that are caregivers, civil engineers as a hotel houseman. Anyone that is working in the employment industry would agree that one of all the applications, hundreds of them, in my case, there is only 5 to 10% chances that employer will be calling us back. Case specific, my combined human resources experiences from the Philippines and the Middle East is a disadvantage. It is not enough to land a job in human resources here in Canada. It's either I have at least they are requiring for me to have at least 3 years of Canadian human resources experience, have a CPHR designation, or educated in a Canadian institution, all of which I don't have when I arrived here. So fast forward, after 3 weeks of job searching and after hundreds of applications, my first job in Canada was being an admin assistant. In my personal category, it's a job. It's not yet a career, but a good stepping stone into acquiring a Canadian corporate environment experience. As much as I want to be in human resources field, there were plenty of factors to consider. All of those job applications, there were only 2 opportunities that has presented to me, being in the human resources assistant role. Both options are offering of minimum wage. It's either I'll be seasonally working within the community in my field, or work and commute in the city and use the public transportation that are not readily accessible to me. So this is like one of the mobility issues that I have faced. The only affordable public transportation during that time was the Greyhound bus, and now it's gone. Even if we can afford to buy a secondhand vehicle as an immigrant, newcomers would not have that opportunity to be able to drive alone immediately. There is a process to that. As an immigrant, I needed to choose between stability or career. So it's either accepting a job to be able to immediately help my family and to augment our daily needs, or go back to studying a human resources field here in Canada, so that I could be able to qualify on those requirements. The decision for me that time was so easy. I accepted the job, and then I tried to be strategic enough to try to work my way up. Because what we have were not enough based on the existing standards in most cases. Immigrants will give up trying to be back into being an engineer, an architect, a dentist, a doctor, a nurse, or into pursuing their previous careers. We are so embracing the new culture that we are grateful and contented with what we currently have, and be able to embrace our jobs, because these jobs are bringing food to the table and augmenting our needs consistently and regularly. So we're setting aside our bigger goals and dreams. I can say that there were plenty of opportunities around me. However, some of them are not accessible for some members of the community. Access to equal employment or career opportunity is a challenge, not only to newcomers and immigrants, but also to Canadians in which English is not the mother tongue, BIPOC people, women, youth, people with disability, and other marginalized members of the community. Employment is one of the glaring evidences wherein qualifications and fair pay equity is needed to be evaluated. And that's my experience.
Thanks, Priscilla. Thanks for sharing your personal experience, and I definitely agree with you about chocolate. It's a very good thing to be obsessed with. Let's move to our second question, and Juliana is gonna ask the second question.
Yes. Okay, move on to our second question. Panel members, how can we, both as individuals and as a community, do something about harmful biases, stereotypes, prejudice, and discrimination to make our communities more inclusive? So, April, would you like to go first and let us know how can we do something about this?
Thank you. This is a question that drives me, I have to say, and I think I've spent my career working on what could be called wicked social problems, which include discrimination and bias, and also ranges at one end of the scale on into all kinds of violence. So I've worked in preventive systems to keep things more healthy, working upstream, so not working on the incidents that we see, but working before that. So how do we change things? And these are complex questions about what you do. It involves social learning for everybody, for the whole population, and then for the people working in the field. Personal growth for each of us around the issues and our own biases and our own capacity to stereotype that kind of comes with being a human. And then figuring out how to model your behavior so that it's helping to influence other people, sort of the bystander effect of doing things differently. Keeping track of what's happening in your community. Are things getting better or worse? And partnering with community leaders, some of whom are on the call tonight, to do different programs that you couldn't do on your own. looking for support, working with people of like minds and maybe people who are very skilled but don't have voice, and putting that all together. Making sure your projects are root cause projects. So it's not just that you're going, oh no, what an awful thing that's happening. Let's do this one thing and it'll be done. But working on what it is that causes ignorance, that causes fears, that causes bias to be established and kind of baked into our systems. So working on that, doing clever designs for small scale projects that are invitational for people, using community strengths that we have in all our communities. We have incredible assets, partly because we're kind of a little bit rural and we have to have a do-it-yourself approach to many projects, programs, and problems. And doing things like also looking for where you can intersect on things that might make a big difference to systems like legislation. So I'm in the middle of running an anti-racism data legislation set of focus groups to figure out how to give input to how to write that better. Public consultation and a specific group consultation that's really detailed and a really good process. Bias busting. There's people on the call tonight with me who are involved in different nonprofits in the Sunshine Coast, learning how to do that. How do you look at your own policies? How do you lever out the bias that's in them and do something better? Developing really good allyship, knowing how to do that, knowing what that means. And in the end, building a longer table, because that's one of the huge keys to this, particularly in our communities, but anywhere.
Thank you, April, for sharing your thoughts. So, Bill, would you like to go next and share your thoughts about how can we do something about harmful biases, stereotypes, prejudice, and discrimination?
I think the best way to get over some of that is to educate people a little bit more, involve them a little bit more in what happens in the community or even in neighboring communities. Invite people to participate in, like we have our cultural activities, and we're open to some of the cultural activities that gives an opportunity to teach and educate people on who we are and what we do. And I love my job, and that educates people, invite people in, and we get to talk. And I always invite questions when I'm at work as well too. And sometimes I talk all day, but only allowed 1 hour at a time with some guests on a tour. But I'll say opportunity to educate. Like in our valley, we have, in our public school, we have our cultural activities, language, singing and dancing, and everybody gets to participate. And I get to go to one of our public schools about once a year, teach them, get them to sing and dance with me. There's drums available to most of the students, but more drums would be a lot better as well too. I got to get a few more drums for the students, I think. But we love to sing and dance, and sometimes the whole gym is full with all the different grades that come in, and they sing and dance, and sometimes they know a little bit more about a song than I do, and that makes me laugh and makes me a little bit more proud to see them. And I even got to sit in a couple of language classes, and everybody wants to participate in learning the language with Lilwat people. And I see it in our elementary school and our high school, and everybody's learning more and more. In my old way, we weren't allowed to do much. But we started learning probably in the 80s, and that's when we started to open up a little bit more for us to learn and the next generation to learn. And I'm very proud to say that a lot of the younger generations participate more than me, and they know more than me, and just have to open them up a little bit more. Like our workplace is a family oriented, so we teach ourselves to be family and to be accepting of each other in what we're educated in, whether it's singing, dancing, or being on the business side of things. And that gives us a good opportunity to be in the world that we are in today. And I would say talking always helps as well too. I would say I'm a better talker with guests or visitors than my own people at times. And sometimes in the summertime when I'm not working, I just go hang out at our local gas station, sit there making some crafts, and some people come over, see what I'm doing. They think I'm selling stuff, but I'm just making crafts just to show them what I could do, and just share my little bit of knowledge with them as well too. Sometimes we just talk about the territory. People always say how beautiful of a place we have, how beautiful British Columbia is, and sometimes it doesn't sink into ourselves as well. That's so beautiful. But those are my things on them. I would say education is one of the better things. You see in our highway, we share some of our language and mileage and how far you know different in our own language, signages in our language, and we also have kiosks that tells a little bit stories or a little bit of history. So if you see them on a highway, that's a good thing to read as well too. That's my answer on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Thanks for letting us know about your experience. Cameron, would you like to go next?
Thank you very much. This is an invitation for particularly white settlers like myself who have a lot of privilege. Don't be afraid to be uncomfortable. Please let us not be afraid to become aware of our own prejudices and harmful biases and stereotypes, even if it goes against, like I was saying, our own narratives that we have for ourselves or our society. You know, I have them. You know, I have biases and stereotypes and prejudices in me, and it's okay to have them, but it's important to be able to face them. Yeah, let's just be willing to be educated and to learn and grow. I really believe that's possible. And also to, as we learn to share about it with others, talk about it with our friends and families, using whatever platforms we have. I like talking about it with my church community. That's a platform I have, so we engage with it there in various ways. And I believe that particularly for us who have a lot, it's our responsibility to give away some of our power and privilege. Let's just get rid of all of it. And we can only do it when we realize that we have it. And that if we give it away, it might feel like losing. I think that's kind of like the hard thing, is that when you're used to a lot of privilege, justice and equity and inclusion might feel like losing. But maybe it's something that's worth losing. It's worth it for me if we can be a little more inclusive and equitable in our world. The other thing is that there are systems that are involved in inclusion and equity, of course, and so, you know, voting and advocating is really important, but I don't feel particularly qualified to talk about that. For me, I believe in love, relationship, and I don't think that's naive. Though I am an optimist, I honestly believe in the power of community. And the benefit, I think, of living in the communities that are represented here is that we're small, that we need each other. It's harder to get into silos of people who are just like us. We can know each other in a different way than bigger places, particularly than bigger places I've lived in, Surrey and Vancouver and London, Ontario. We can do things that are small and grassroots that have really big impacts. And so I just want to sort of shout out and name my gratitude for those sorts of organizations. They're informal opportunities, of course, but the formal ones for me is the Squamish Multi-Faith Association has been a great gift for me for that. And also just want to thank the Squamish Welcome Center for the connections I've made, for this opportunity, and for this conversation. And that's all for me.
Thanks, Cameron, for sharing. I'll invite Darnelda to go next.
All right, so I'm going to expand a little bit on what some of April's themes were. I think first we need to uncover our own biases. So that means we need to work on ourselves, personal development, curiosity, and continual learning. And then reach out to others. View and treat them as equals, because they are. Ask questions, solicit input, and then actually listen to the answers. They may have a different view than ours as a result of a different upbringing or different life experiences, but as we listen and get to know them, we build a foundation of trust. And that allows us to have straight conversations, the difficult conversations, and we can reach out and help each other. All of us in our communities are leaders. Yes, I'm elected. I see a couple other elected officials on here as well, and we know each other, but we're all leaders. And so our examples, when we show inclusiveness, when we include others, it gives other people permission to also follow our example. So a huge one that our community took part in this last year. As usual, we planned our Canada Day parade. And we weren't doing a parade where we had people coming together, we were doing a drive-by parade. So it was actually routes were set out where we drive through the communities. And then the graves were uncovered in Kamloops. So I reached out to the chief of the Shishalt Nation here and asked, like, is your community okay with us going forward with the Canada Day parade? And he said, we've heard from a few that aren't, but the majority are still okay with it. And then on Monday, so Thursday was Canada Day. On Monday, there were other graves uncovered. So I called again and I said, so where are you now with this? And they said, we really would rather you not go ahead. And so we canceled our Canada Day parade. But the other thing is I asked them, are you doing something? Is your community doing some kind of gathering or something? He said, well, we're talking about a small gathering and then a walk along the waterfront. So I asked, could the community join in? Because our community is feeling the grief, right? And they're hurting as well, and they want to share with you. So they were taken aback by that because nobody had asked them that kind of thing before. So they said, well, they'll get back to me. So on Tuesday, they called me back and said, yes, we're going to have this little gathering and we're opening it to the community. Let the community know that they're welcome to come. Well, our community got on board. I have never seen so many orange shirts be purchased within 2 days. The whole community went out and purchased orange shirts. On Thursday, we had 1,500 people show up. It blew the community, it blew the Shishalt Nation away. They were surprised, they were humbled, and they were so proud that they could lead all of these people. It was a huge outpouring of support from the community, and that's actually opened up different types of relationships in the community. And I'll tell you, every time I'm walking around the community, if a Shishalt Nation member sees me somewhere, they always say hello, which never had happened before. So it's changed the dynamics in our community just by having that relationship and asking if we can be part of what's going forward. So we all have a role. We can all make a difference. Thank you.
Thank you, Darnelda. I remember that day. Yeah, it was huge. Please, Izum, would you like to go next?
Sure. I think Dernelda and April and Cameron already have said the similar ideas, but I think it starts from within ourselves. Each one of us can start from our own inner work, and because we all have biases, whether you believe it or not, I think we all do, in some areas of a certain degree, whether you really believe it or not, or you're aware of it or not. And so what is it of yours that, what do you think that is the way? And take some time and ask yourself. I think that's a very first thing that we can all do individually. And usually I think those biases and prejudice come from the stereotypical images that we've come to learn through our lives, from listening to our parents' conversation, growing up, from the TV, movies, and commercials, or ads, or what we've learned at schools, or what we hear in a society, and so on. But are they true? I think self-interrogation and being aware of your own biases or prejudice are a good place to start. Yeah, and so how do we do that? How do we work towards breaking these biases, stereotypes, and prejudice we have created in ourselves unintentionally or intentionally, so we can respect our differences and be more inclusive? I think one simple way, I think almost everybody can do this if you wish to, is to connect with someone who you don't know much about them or their culture or their way of thinking. It doesn't have to be a big organizational thing. It just can be just you and your neighbor, your friends. It's so easy to always hang out with the people who look like you on your days off, to enjoy doing what you like to do. What I mean by people like you is that you look similar, you have similar common sense, come from the same cultural values, understand the same written, understand the same unwritten social norms or vibes. That sort of things that make people feel comfortable to hang out with. So let's break that intentionally, and it can be very uncomfortable. And the next hard part is on your next day off, or after work if you have time, and when you don't have a commitment, instead of your usual routine, you're going to put some effort in going out of your comfort zone and be open to get to know someone you don't really know all that much. Where do you find those people? It can be at workplace, perhaps at the activities you're part of, or your neighborhood, perhaps at the playground if you have little children, or perhaps at the class social for your teenager kids, or maybe a place where you volunteer. Reach out to people that you normally wouldn't start having conversation with, and then invite them to go for a walk together, or for a coffee, or have a chat, and with open mind and curiosity, and continue cultivate that sort of relationship, and don't stop just after one time and say you've done it. It becomes much harder to hold someone as the different or distant other and not feel connected to that person through the common humanity if you start interacting in person, I think. And it becomes more difficult to hold prejudice or discrimination or disinterest towards someone who you directly connected with open mind. And connecting and having conversation with an open mind usually shatters some of the assumption that you have unconsciously made about the person you're spending time with together to get to know them. And that's for the individual part. And as for the community-wise, things that we can work together as a community towards being more inclusive community. And we know that diversity is a fact and inclusion is a choice. Having diverse group members in every level of society is a good place to start. From the higher up, where the decisions being made, to the backbone of the industry or the most frontline servicing fields. Think about what conditions have we created that maintain certain groups as the perpetual majority here. And once you have diverse group of people in your circle or group, pay close attention. If everyone's ideas been heard, and pay extra attention to those ideas, won't be taken as seriously because they aren't in a majority. I think these can be considered as a community working towards being a more inclusive community. Thank you.
Appreciate your points of view, Izumi. Before we go to the next panel member, I would like to remember you that if you have any question for the panel members, you can add at the chat, and we are going to collect at the end. Priscilla, can you go next?
Yeah, for sure. I would like to start in saying that to be able to address it individually, we need to address the microaggressions that we are experiencing on a daily basis. And as a society, we need to learn and unlearn some things that we have already prejudged the other members of the cultures. I remember attending one of the diversity and equity inclusion workshop last year, and the facilitator have talked about microaggressions. So he said it is a great way to think about microaggression is to view it as a mosquito bite. Getting bit by it once won't harm you, but in the long run, if you get bit enough so many times, there is a risk of you developing malaria or a high yellow fever. So this is the same with microaggressions. They seem harmless. They're like mosquito bites, but can have long-lasting harmful effects on people. So like some examples of the microaggressions that I have personally experienced, or maybe some of the members of the community have experienced as well, is that people would always say, like, oh, I would never have thought that you are from the Philippines. You speak English very well. Or something like, if you are in one of the hospitals in the Lower Mainland, they will say something like, we do have interpreters available in here. Sometimes it sounded like an insult. I know they don't mean no harm, but sometimes we need to think about these things and like backtrack a little bit. Some of the other microaggressions that I could hear on a daily basis or like on a regular basis is that you make good money as an immigrant. Your family must be very proud of you. Sometimes it sounded like a praise, but if you are like going to dig it deeper, it sounds like an insult. Or something like on the effect of, you make good money in the immigrant, no wonder, no, you make money as an immigrant, good money as an immigrant, no wonder you can afford to send money in your family in the Philippines on a regular basis. These are like praise, but it's then you are actually pulling us down into that statement. So on the first few instances that I was here in Canada, when I was still in the stage of learning the Canadian culture, I just smile at it, and most of the time we just let it slide. It took me some time to learn how to confront these microaggressions. I don't want to initiate an uncomfortable conversation, or let alone think that I might offend this person if I say something about it. But come to think of it, I was like realizing that, wait, come to think of it, I am the one that is being offended by it. And they won't know if I don't say something. I need to say something. So later on, I've realized that in most cases, people don't really mean it. It is unintentional to offend you, or they are just not aware that they are offending someone. So talking to people about it actually gave them a chance to be aware and realize their own personal prejudices and biases and some stereotyping. And as a result, they are trying to change their behavior and be more sensitive about the things that they say or stereotype some other cultures. If you are calling them out or calling them in, some school system use this term, on a timely manner, slowly it will be ingrained in their minds that this is not the standard or norms for a certain culture or the entire culture. And the next time they are less likely that they will do or say something similar or avoid things that might be stereotyping some people. As for the employers, because I talked about my employment ordeal, I suggest that you need to invest into knowing your applicants, not just knowing them by resume on what their resume could offer. Do some background check. Once they are hired, search a little bit into the new employees' ethnicity, their background, their culture. When I was working in the Middle East, I got offended at first because I have extended my hand and like my boss didn't accepted it. But they have politely said, we don't touch the other lady's hands. And so at the end of the day, when we set up our employees for success and we understand a little bit about their culture and their ethnicity, it will be the organizations that will benefit on it in the long run. You would find lots of hardworking immigrants and newcomers that are coming in your door, and they would be serving you in the long run as well. I was listening to Brene Brown's podcast, and she shared that saying something like, I think our job is not to recognize emotions in other people, but to really get curious. Get curious about people's stories, and when they tell us their story, we'll listen and we'll believe them. I don't think empathy is about walking in other people's shoes. I think it's about listening to the stories they tell about their experiences in their shoes and freaking believing them, even though our walk is different. And I think that's where we miss everything around race, around identity, around gender, around poverty and class. We don't believe the stories people tell about us, their pain and their experiences, because A, it's too dissimilar from our experience, or B, we don't want to be accountable. People are opting out of vital conversations about diversity and inclusivity because they fear looking wrong, saying something wrong, or being wrong. Choosing our own comfort over hard conversations is the epitome of privilege, and it corrodes trust and moves us away from meaningful and lasting change. So that's from Brene Brown. I usually listen to her podcast. One of my professors back in Adamson University, Manila, asked a question before: would you rather be educated or cultured? Answers would vary depending on where we are at in our lives. If we are wanting to know more and learn more about something, it's easy to say, be educated. If we are in a stage wherein we are already exposed to so many lived experiences, we can say, be cultured. To answer the second question, in my personal opinion, as an individual and as a member of a contributing society, let's say I'd rather be both. Let's be educated and be cultured. Thank you.
Thanks, Priscilla. Appreciate your sharing. Any panel member would like to add something else?
Well, actually, Juliana, we have a question from the audience for our panel members.
Great, go ahead.
One of the audience asked for the panel members a question that says, what is an example of equity you have seen work well in your community? We have panel members from the Sea to Sky and the Sunshine Coast. So if any of the panel members can think of an example about successful, let's say, or an example of equity that worked in the community. Any ideas? April? See,
I have an idea, which will be no surprise to anybody that works with me because I am the idea person often. And one of my skills is getting groups who then take on the idea and actually make it work, I guess. Two things spring to mind. First of all, I'm working right now with an advisory group with the Resilience BC anti-racism reporting and dealing with incidents group. And they are an increasingly diverse group who bring ways of collaborating and of actioning things in a really deep and fast way. So they're one of the most effective groups I've ever worked with. And it's a joy to work with them. And we all get immense enjoyment out of working on very difficult issues. And there's something about that means that there's sustainability with the group and with the projects. And the other example I have is a group I used to work with at the District of Sechelt some time ago, when they had an accessibility committee that was very diverse to start with. And I challenged them to take on social accessibility as well as physical accessibility. And they rose to that challenge, and they challenged me to do better work than I ever have. And again, the level of collaboration and the quickness with which and agility with which they could make things happen was great. And the fact what the district took on most of the recommendations and guidelines that we produced, and we were really proud of that. And it was another great example.
Thanks, April, for sharing this example. Ronaldo?
Yeah, I think what I'm starting to see in grant applications, for example, that we put together at the District of Sechelt is including people with lived experience. But that means in some cases that we need to be able to pay them to be there. So we recently did a poverty reduction action plan. We couldn't just assume that we're going to have somebody who could take time off work or whatever. So we included that, and we're seeing that more and more and more in our grant applications, to be able to include those who may not have the opportunity, but we want to hear their voice, and it's being really effective.
Further, now that you say grant applications, that's for what?
Grant applications.
Oh, grant, sorry.
Grant applications, yes.
Thanks. Grant applications from the municipality or district of Sechelt?
It could be with the province or with the federal government.
Okay.
Right, where we're applying for funds to move some initiative forward, and we want to include other voices.
So is anyone from the panel members? We have Cameron raising his hand. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry, unless was Bill, did Bill have his hand up? Maybe not. Well, sorry, just wanted to sort of speak to the work of the multi-faith group again, and just talk about an event we do every year with, that was actually started by the Squamish Nation, members of the Squamish Nation, Multicultural Day in Squamish every year. It's sort of a big celebration of different cultures, and a lot of the faith groups and different cultural groups sort of participate. And it's been sort of the circle's was widened. You know, the people from the Squamish Nation are still owning and part of that, but have sort of invited the multi-faith group into the leadership of that. And so it's not like a takeover, it's like a increase of the number of people at the table who are holding it. And just a great, I think, example of inviting more people into projects and sort of promoting sort of learning and celebration of our differences.
Thanks, Cameron. If the panel members don't have any more answers for these questions, then members of the audience can raise their hand, use the reactions function on Zoom, and they can unmute themselves and speak, or if they have a question. Priscilla, were you trying to say something? I saw
Oh, yeah, I
you
just
unmuted.
wanted to share what Whistler community has shown as an equity piece is that this is a comment that is happening province-wide. As a community, there are lots of not-for-profit groups here around here, and what the not-for-profit groups are doing is that they are meeting the clients on where they are at. And so for people that are needing more help than the others, there are more extra services that is being extended to them. Equity is not being able to deliver a service. It is being able to deliver a service that is badly needed by a certain level of the member of the community. As a society in Whistler, the not-for-profit groups are really good into like providing this equitable resources to the members. And as a province, I could see that the best example of being an equitable society is that on the way how COVID is being handled in the society, the vaccination system was really great. I am hearing stories from the Middle East and some of my friends and family in the Philippines on how disorganized the vaccination system were, and I was like very thankful and grateful in being living in a society and in a country wherein there is an equal weigh-in of opportunities for people that are needing it most, especially like for the older and more vulnerable people, they are being given that vaccination ahead of time. And so it would take a little bit of step back to appreciate what the government is doing to us if you came from a third world country, and be able to appreciate the things that are already there that we are trying not to see.
Thanks, Priscilla. Any other questions from our audience? Feel free to unmute yourself and ask your question, or you can just type it in the chat here.
Not only questions, if someone would like to share your own perspective about diversity and equity. Okay.
I'll make a comment. Judy Rother. I was just about to write it in the comments. I'm a board member of Sunshine Coast Foundation, which makes grants to nonprofit groups. And we, as a group, are looking at our granting, the way that we do grants, the way our applications are written, and realizing that they're not accessible to everyone, and the way that we're doing it. And we're trying to look at this of how to do it to make it more inclusive. We're looking at things like, do we have to have someone reporting back? Maybe somebody would do an oral presentation back. It's a lot of things, not something that happens quickly, and something that we have to do in a thoughtful step-by-step way. But we're certainly opening the conversations of looking at the whole granting process.
Thanks, Jude. Okay, I'm going to one more question. Would you like Bill, go ahead.
What is the definition of equity? I have trouble defining it. I just need an example of equity. I looked and it says business, but it's also, I think it's just like equal opportunities and for everybody. Like I had a friend from the Philippines, she came over about 10 years ago. She tried to find a job. She was educated. She had all the diplomas, masters, doctorates. And she came to Canada she only stayed here for like 6 months, and the only job she was offered was housekeeping jobs. So she just went back home. But I just want to talk about a little bit more about the way we operate at our workplace is to educate people, but it's also we like to educate ourselves as well too, by involving everybody in a little bit more involved with our guests as well too. But I like to tell everybody in our workplace too, to just to say I love you. That way we could get along a lot better. So sometimes during the day, sometimes somebody yells out, "I love you," and then everybody else yells it back, and that gets our own small workplace community together, makes it a little bit more a happier place to work at all the time. And some of the tour groups that used to come in before pre-COVID, some of the tour directors called me into their special meeting just to train them on telling them how to say I love you, or how to how to balance your life a little bit better by doing certain little exercises just to keep yourself balanced. That's all I had to say. Thank you.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Bill.
We have a question from Armand, if I'm pronouncing your name correctly. You can go ahead.
Thank you. My name's Armand. I'm a counselor with the District of Squamish, and I think I really liked Cameron's comment that it's a journey, and I don't think that there's an end destination, and it's something that needs to be worked on at every sort of opportunity. And sometimes where we've had the biggest successes or had the biggest impact is maybe somewhere where you wouldn't have thought of. So it's not this idea of inclusive and equity isn't sort of an isolated topic unto itself, and like, oh, I'm going to sit and work on this now. And I think opportunities like these conversations are just so important, and so many issues we face in our communities. People are looking for solutions. Can you fix this? This needs to be fixed. And it's about positively, I feel it's about positively impacting those things and having these types of values front of mind as you go about and find new ways to incorporate them into whatever the work is you're doing in your community, whether it's a community organization or a business venture unto itself. So yeah, I appreciate everyone's perspective here today, and I just want to sort of reinforce that point, that it is sort of a never-ending journey, and it needs to be worked on intentionally at every step that you take. So I'll leave it there. Thank you so much. I've enjoyed both sessions I've attended so far, as yesterday as well. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Armand. We have one more question here. Do you think having a more diverse society eliminates racism? How? Any panel member would like to share some thoughts about this? Daniela?
So I have 3 children, a number of grandchildren now too, but we grew up in a small community in Alberta, and we moved to Edmonton. I went back to school, to university, and my kids went to school. My daughter was the oldest, and she came home from school a few weeks in and said, "Mom, how come I'm in the dump class?" I went, "What? Like, what are you getting at?" She said, "Well, I'm almost the only white person in the class." And blew me away, because that's not how I am. I mean, April knows me, that's not how I am. But that was what the environment was like that they had been growing up in. So, I mean, we obviously had a conversation about that and everything. And I mean, her best friend was this Vietnamese girl. So totally changed her perspective. But I was unconscious to the biases and the upbringing that they were exposed to prior to that. If we had not moved to that community, I would never have known that. So though it was we ended up moving later to a native reserve on an island, and we lived there with the family. And I mean, we need life experiences, and we need people to challenge us so that we expose what those biases are that we're unaware of. So we need people's voices. I think, I don't remember who said it, but they said, if we see or hear something that, I forget how it was put, but basically, if it's not okay, you have to say something. It was Priscilla, right? Said if we experience something, it's not okay to just sit back, because there's no change that's going to happen unless we speak up.
Thanks, Donaldo. Definitely, the school system probably should be involved, and raising children, I bet, is a hard thing to do these days. Would anyone else like to answer the same question? I can read it for you again. Do you think having a more diverse society eliminates racism, and how?
I would like just to add up into that question. I don't think the number or the quantity of diversity would eliminate racism, no matter how small or big a group is. There would always be racism. I think the more important thing to think about is that we need to educate ourselves. What are the things that are causing racism? They always say in the social services, like where I work with, that people hurt people hurts people. But then it's not the case on all instances. What we just need to know is that we identify our own personal awareness on where we stand in having a diverse group of people. We cannot change the wind's direction, but we can change and change our attitude towards it. We can adjust ourselves to move in a different direction. It's not a matter of quantity, but it's a matter of like where you are at, or where is the perspective of the society in general in identifying racism, what is racist and what is not.
We can start. Bill, go ahead.
A little bit more on education and diversity in British Columbia. There's over 200 different tribes in British Columbia alone, and we're all different, and including everybody else that's in British Columbia. It's we just need a little bit more education to be able to respect each other and to have how could you say, better community with each other. That's my thoughts on that. And I love working in Whistler too, because the RMOW always invites us to do a greeting, do a welcome whenever there's a big meeting going on, or if there's a big education program for some of the work groups that are coming in. And I think it's just mostly being open and inviting in another way as well too. But I think the main thing is education. Thank you.
Thanks, Bill. April, I saw your hand. You raised your hand as well.
I think that there needs to be almost universally more education, and we need to learn to deal with our own fears, because often that's what fuels amplification of negative stuff for something that's a social construct. Race does not exist as a biological fact. It is constructed socially through our interactions and through what we believe and through what we give to each other intergenerationally that isn't actually true. And I think, we need to to be kind to people, because you can't cause social change by being violent. It doesn't work. We need to be kind, invitational, continue to do what Judy will recognize as a mantra I have, which is drip, drip, drip. So do whatever you can in the smallest way consistently, then do it again. Challenge your friends and everybody around you to do the smallest thing that you can do that's significant, and do it consistently. Over time, that convinces people of other things being possible, I believe, and I've seen that happen, particularly in small communities, but not only. Did I have the last word for tonight?
Oh, sorry, April. I was about to just reinforce what you said about educating ourselves. I remember having this conversation. I was working in human resources, and then a finance manager saying, "That's just a common sense. This is not a common sense. This should be a common knowledge." So it's so easy to say it's common sense. What is common to some cultures are not common to others. And so this should be a common knowledge for everyone.
Thanks, Priscilla. We are seeing here on our chat that we have some, we're not sure if there are questions or some comments. There's one that says, is equity the same for everyone? Maybe equity is treating everyone differently. And we also have a comment. Let me see. Someone said, Dave, comment, the half dozen elected municipal officials tonight are all white. And no, sorry, yeah, and most participants who asked to speak to questions proposed by the participants are white. Anyone would like to comment?
Yeah, that was an observation from one of our participants. Again, if anyone has a comment in 20 seconds, they can go ahead. We're mindful of the time. We want to keep anyone past 7 p.m. If anyone wants to add a comment, they can go ahead. If no one, then I think that's it. Go ahead, Renata.
So one of the things that we've been doing on the Sunshine Coast before every municipal election is hold a women's campaign school. And because we recognize that it was, retired male who were only the people who were getting elected. So we put an effort into focusing on women. And in 2018 was the first time on the Sunshine Coast we had over 50% women elected. Now I think this year, we're going to do one again this year because there's an election in the fall, but I think it's going to be, I think we're going to look at opening it to, I don't know what it's going to look like yet, but it's not going to be just women. We're going to open it up to encourage others to come forward. So maybe April and I will talk and we'll see what we can do to include that. Because it's all on the Sunshine Coast. I think we've got one immigrant on the Sunshine Coast, and that's it out of all the positions. So we need to have other cultures and other people represented. We need those voices.
Thanks, Renata. The time is up. Sorry if we didn't have time to answer your question or comment, but I would like to thank all the panel members and all the participants who joined us today. And in conclusion, I would say understanding our surrounding and see curiosity and keep learning and reach out to others. Again, thanks for joining us today. We have our next topic to be discussed next Monday about immigration. So join us please on the 31st of January. Have a nice evening, everyone, and we hope to see you next week.
See you next
Thank
Monday.
you.
Thank
Night,
you
so much.
everyone.